Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand.
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
And today we are going to be continuing our discussion about the red flags, the things that you should be aware of avoiding when it comes to getting a shady or sloppy or shifty or even just a complacent attorney involved. And it occurred to me when we were wrapping up the last segment that we were talking about, this is literally the biggest legal and financial transaction that you will make in your entire lifetime, all in one sitting, all in one transaction.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
really.
is there, if you say, I'm going to buy a lawnmower, and you maybe don't do your research the way you should, and you end up buying a crappy lawnmower and it goes out in a couple years, you're out maybe, I don't know, what do lawnmowers cost these days?
$100.
Few $100,
Yeah.
maybe $1,000
Yeah.
sort of thing. But if you decide, I'm going to go on the cheap side when it comes to getting an estate plan in place because I just don't feel that we should have to pay a lot for this. That is a very dangerous way of thinking because you are literally putting into the hands of somebody that you don't know the health of the transaction that is going to occur, that's going to encompass literally everything you've earned, everything you've received, everything that you want to pass on to your loved ones, and how are they structuring this, and are they doing this in a correct way. And that's why we're pointing out things that we have seen come through this conference room that have really raised, like I said, those red flags. And one of them is basically not naming the actual beneficiaries.
Yes. This one is my biggest pet peeve of all time when it comes to estate planning, because you have no idea how much trouble you can get into if you just say, my children, my grandchildren, the people on my block. I want to leave it to all people named Matt over 6 feet tall. You need to be specific, because if you're not specific, someone can pop out of the woodwork, which happens a lot.
Yes.
Someone can be in there who was not intended to be in there. You need to be specific. Even if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you intend to still have children, you can always update the documents. Name whatever darn kids you have now. If you have a slew of grandchildren, we just did a trust the other day where people had 18 nieces and nephews they wanted to leave stuff to. And they're like, well, what if we get more nieces and nephews? I'm like, just call me.
Yeah.
It's a very quick amendment and update. And the reason being is we want to make it so that it's the exact person, that it goes to the right person that's included, and that someone can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm part of this group.
Have you heard of genetic testing? Have you heard a story
yeah.
of somebody who all of a sudden has a daughter that they never knew about, or a son that they never knew about? And obviously this is typically men, because if you're a woman, you have a child.
It's every dude's nightmare. There's a guy there's a baby or a child walking around that looks vaguely like them, and you're like, I didn't know that this existed.
Right. Yeah. And so with the genetic testing that's going on, that is becoming a much more commonplace story. And so the danger of saying, I leave all of my estate to my children, now has this added complication of, what is a child? Because if they come back with a genetic test and they say, hello, I am a child, then was that what was really anticipated by the person who signed the document? I don't think so. But you'll never know for sure unless you actually define the terms. And I think that's another element of estate planning that can be easily overlooked, that is extremely important, and that is defining your terms.
Yes, and just one thing that I want to get across before we go on to defining terms, which I love, is that I think this probably goes more under the sloppy category.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lawyer is trying to do anything shady for the most part. I really think it's just laziness.
Yeah.
That they just don't want to spend the time to draft it, to name every person, make sure all the necessary
Mm-hmm.
sections are in there for every person, and to even update it over time if need
Right.
be. So I think that's just sloppiness. But yes, defining terms. Let's go into that. So I told you off air a little bit. Another pet peeve of mine is two things with defining terms. A, I hate relying on statutes. People who are
Yes.
picking up these documents are not going to be like, oh, reference Wisconsin statute 1010101010 or 2 or whatever. And then no one's going to pick that up and be like, oh, yeah, I remember that definition in Wisconsin statute. No one's ever going to look up the darn
How
statute.
many pages are the Wisconsin statutes overall? I mean, I have a book set when they were giving out book sets. I don't even know if they do this anymore, but it takes up about this much real
Yeah.
estate on my desk, right? I mean, it's a 5 or 6 volume set that contains all of the Wisconsin statutes. You have to go to law school to even figure out how to find a statutory section.
Yeah.
And so, that takes up 15 minutes of a class.
But you didn't read all of the laws when you were in law school?
Well, all of them
Well,
except for
I know things have changed over the years, Kirsten.
yes, yes.
But when I went to law school, we had this giant book. It was about this big, and we started on day one with law number one. So we opened the book. It said law number one, and then law number two, and then on the last day we got to the last law.
I don't even believe that for 1 second.
It's 100% true.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
In a separate video, I'll talk about what law number one is.
Okay.
So, but as we digress, but yeah, the Wisconsin statutes are huge, and so
right.
referencing a Wisconsin statute, you might as well just make it up.
Right.
just not even
there's
put it there.
no way a layperson can not only find that statute, but then also understand it properly because they don't have the legal training to be able to understand it.
Well, and how many times when we look up a statute do we have to read one sentence 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times in a row to be like, what does this actually mean?
And then we really don't know what it means until we actually look at the case law to see how the courts have defined that particular passage in the statute. What are the contours? What are the boundaries? Where's the elasticity in it?
Right.
What are the statutory guidelines? So
it's like trying to interpret a text from someone you have a crush on. Like, right. What does K mean? Is there a period? Is it capital K? Just K? What do you mean?
K for kiss?
No. Like, hey, let's go out tonight. K.
Well, see, it could mean K for kiss. It could mean K.
Well, I have a friend. Okay. I have a friend who says sure all the time. I hate sure because sure could be like sure, or it could be like sure, but like you never know if it's a text.
That's true.
So he always texts me sure, and so I always respond like, "Dude, are you like excited to play golf or like no?"
Yeah.
Anyway,
no,
so
I understand.
But yeah, the interpretation, and we cannot expect someone who's not a lawyer to sit down and research the statute and see what these defined terms are. And so I hate it when they're like, okay, we're going to use these silly, wonky legal terms that you don't need to use, and we're going to just point to the statute to define them, and you'll figure out later.
Right. It really is a recipe for making that person go back to the lawyer and say, I have no clue what this means. Can you please help me? And then can you please help manage the trust, right? And so in a certain sense, it might be sloppy, primarily sloppy or just lazy, but it's also could potentially be driving business into the future, planting those seeds.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me do some research. 2 hours later, here's your bill for $700.
Right.
So, yeah. No, so, I totally see that.
What we like to do in our estate plans is not cite to the statutes for anything meaningful. I mean, there are portions where you have to make statutory reference, but we always define every term within the document in plain English.
Right.
Because then it is readable by our clients who are not attorneys, and they can manage their trusts without necessarily having to get us involved.
Right. And so with that, defining terms, pet peeve I have is if you're going to define a term, use the darn term. Don't use 3 other terms that are synonyms.
Yes.
So I read through a trust the other day. They used descendants, children, and issue.
Oh, my word.
First of all, lawyers should stop using the word issue.
Yes.
Unless it's a legal writing, don't use the word issue, because whenever I see that and clients ask me, like, well, what issues are we talking about? I'm like,
yeah.
it's not
Yeah,
that.
it's a little antiquated. A little
So
antiquated.
there's no reason to use multiple terms. As if you
Mhm.
define one term, if you just want to use the term children, but you define it, phenomenal.
Right.
Just use the term children. There's no reason to use every term in the book. There's no reason to sound smart or sound like a lawyer. Clients don't care.
Right. That's a very good point.
So yeah.
Yes. So be consistent. Make sure that everything is outlined well. Definitely define who your beneficiaries are, who the people are that you love, that you want to make sure gets your assets. And if that is in some way not happening in your estate plans, well, we are absolutely here for you, and we are happy to help you with making sure that we protect you both today and in your future. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.